fear and horror are an appropriate response.
Which I know very well, so I've lived in London most of my grown-up life.
There is no other reason to be given why you have not gone to hell.
I think he should apologise.
Oh, sinner!
We have a shattered world around us. We must strive for a sane and just peace.
You hang by a slender thread with the flames of divine wrath flashing about it, ready every moment to singe it. Nothing of your own, nothing that you have ever done, nothing that you can do to induce God to spare you one moment.
Which I know very well, so I've lived in London most of my grown-up life.
And I think he just continues to incite hatred and prejudice.
Consider the fearful danger you are in.
This is a journey into a lunatic asylum.
We have a terrific task ahead of us.
If the caste system came into my own backyard and began affecting the way the society around me behaves, if I was given a good deal of experience with it in my own life, I would fight it in the same way I fight Christianity. I'm inclined to think that my fellow atheists and anti-theists would do the same. Nothing motivates like personal experience.
British diplomats arranged a shoddy partition agreement that ignored the fact there would be interreligious conflict.
I remember the first day when I went to school, I was really frightened. All I could remember, there was so many English children there, only a few Asian lads, and I couldn't even speak English.
Leicester today is an ethnically diverse city praised for its multicultural relations. A huge contrast to the mass immigration of the early 70s. The city council even placed an advert in a local Ugandan newspaper urging people not to come because it couldn't cope with them.
There is a real lot of misinformation going on about police officers killing black people in custody. Last year, 16 people died for various reasons in police custody, generally drug overdoses. Of those 16, only one was black. Last year, police shot 3 people dead. Only one of those were black. There is a real narrative that's going on here, I think driven by people within the Black Lives Matter movement who want to destabilise and disrupt society.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. This is Sky News Today. Coming up next.
I suppose every generation has to recover from what it was taught in its youth.
The movements of the team have become slow and uncoordinated, and it is apparent that they are now incapable of taking proper aim.
You stabbed 4 times. He's been completely traumatized by the experience, and the way in which he was stabbed was very traumatic. They damaged his bladder, his kidneys, they did a proper job on him. All these organs have been damaged permanently.
One of the most potent weapons that the police use against black youth is the charge of sus. That is, being a suspected person, loitering with intent to commit a crime.
The thing that would have kept him safe was for him to stay in Somaliland for longer. She said, I have no doubt of that. 100% more safe than it is for my children in London.
So if you put this different sort of person in a different kind of environment, as in the colonies, you begin to understand the slow creation of something that ends up being a kind of colonial American mindset or mentality. And this brings us to the conditions of life. You have a different kind of person, now you're putting them in a different kind of living situation. And there were a number of things that were different about living conditions in the colonies. So these risk-taking types who came to the colonies.
Actually, I myself am against the South Africans. Because, I mean the white people in the South Africa, because In whose house can one come and take away
They haven't
the
taken away any
property? Because what they are doing now, the white people are mining and taking the property for themselves, and that's what they shouldn't do, because the native people who are living there, they should have what is the property of theirs. Well, actually, before I came from Ethiopia, I was reading about this in the press, and they were pretty hot about it. They were against the white people. The same thing could happen to them, of course.
And from in my country, I think we had the ideals of democracy long before they were ever thought of in your little island.
When did you have the idea of democracy?
We had the ideals of democracy. We had the village councils, what we call the village panchayats, where the elected elders of the village managed the village as an administrative unit. That was done as far back 3,500 years before Christ.
Well, I think
Yes, you do, yes.
I shall have to admit that here am I defending our British way of life.
Sarah, let me interrupt just a moment. After Gopi and Amin had argued so violently with their prejudices against each other, did I understand them to say that they really would have loved each other very much if it hadn't been for the British who came in and divided them? Well, let's follow that one out a little bit.
Yes, I think now by talking to Gopi, we are coming much more closer. And I do hope, let us hope that when Gopi becomes the leader of his country, he would show much more tolerance and a better way to settle things without.
But how did Britain make the Hindus hate the Muslims? How did Britain make that happen?
Because, you know, a country that is ruling another one, it doesn't want it to rise economically as well as intellectually. So it will do anything that possible to keep the people away from learning and away from other means of progress. It will keep them from uniting. You know, of course, if they unite, you'd be nowhere. They'd build up they'd start thinking of independence, and they'd start thinking of breaking away, and that's what happened after the mutiny. The Renaissance followed, and so you had to give the colonies up, and that's one of the reasons of the present day problems. That's my own opinion.
By that was, they told me, quote, whites have a pretty good situation right now, unquote.
On this oppression business, if you say the Bantu in South Africa oppressed, how do you account for this fact? That every year, regularly, hundreds of thousands of Bantu and Negroes from other territories adjoining South Africa, such as Portuguese, East Africa, etc., are invading our country illegally in spite of the laws.
We've gone.
Are they coming for oppression? They know what goes on in South Africa, and they come back year and year again. Those who have worked in South Africa and have been sent back, come back. Are they coming back to seek oppression?
Your query, this does not answer what I'm driving at. The Africans have the land. They were there before you.
They do not have the land, and they were
mine
not
the
there
gold.
before us.
All right, wait a minute, Susan. Let me get my point straight before you go. They mine the lands, they get the diamonds, you sell the diamonds outside. And when you get the diamonds, you say they are not to be given their own fair share of the quota. Have you read Cry of the Beloved Country?
Yes, I have. It's a one-sided view.
One-sided view, and it was written by an European. How could Europeans be having one-sided view about their own
They're
king and
radicals
king?
in every nation.
Radicals? You are radicals in South Africa, then?
Oh, no, we're not. Look, something that's ingrained in the Hindus and the Muslims from time immemorial when we were little painted blue savages running around in skins.
Well, let me tell you, by the time when you're little blue painted savages running around in skins, as you most aptly put it, the Muslims did not exist. They came in very much later. And in the second place, although I agree that in later years there was some friction, you definitely played off the Muslims against each other. You left us with a great heritage of a divided country after you left with a fanfare.
Well, and how is it, if you say this so scathingly, that I was listening to one of your top present Indian people, the Maharaja of Patiala. I hope he doesn't mind my quoting him, but he was speaking at the Fairleigh Dickinson University near Woodridge in New Jersey the other day, and he was saying that the British left India but did not leave her unfriendly towards her, and that the British left as friends and as gentlemen, and it is that friendship which binds India to the Commonwealth. Well, if there's such friendship, I'm sure that that friendship could never have arisen if we had been playing such petty politics. And even your President Nehru, in his speech in 1950, in honor of the Australian Prime Minister, said that it was the friendly approach in the Commonwealth that counts.
I agree it's a friendly approach in the Commonwealth that counts. And I said it is our generosity which has made it possible towards you, our friendliness
I
towards you.
do not think so. I
Gopi,
think...
when do you think your feeling against the British began? Was it there the moment the British came into India, or did they do things wrong?
I do not think so. I don't think when the British first came to my country, they were, as Sarah said, as traders, as merchants. And in the beginning, they were very sympathetic. They absorbed the culture of the masses. But as very soon after, I should say in about 20 years afterwards, when more and more Englishmen began to come in after the opening of the Suez Canal, at once they formed a clique. They formed a clique of superior people. These were the subject masses. Never again did they come to penetrate to the lower levels, as we call the great lords and the natives, as you called us, we are natives. And as soon as this happened, from that minute onwards, the British supremacy was in danger. And I think it's from that minute that the bitterness began, actually.
Could I say here, I know this perhaps is not right for me to say in this context, but I came over here thinking that always our colonial policy had been right. I definitely believed that the whole world should be grateful to us for everything that we had done for them. Of course, we have done a lot for them, and I genuinely believed that. But having come in contact with so many people who I expected to rush into my arms and say, "Oh, darling mother country," and realize that they don't do that and that they rather resent our help, I'm beginning to wonder whether we should have ever gone there in the first place. But the minute I wonder, were we right to go in and attack what we considered a barbarous nation, then I begin to consider, well, what would that nation have been like today? Would it have managed to progress itself, or would it be just another nation which would have been taken in under the communist wing?
This 4-year-old, born in England, is already becoming familiar with the English alphabet.
You have one whole bundle of £6, in addition to a decimal part of £6. Therefore, your answer...
Co-education breaks the traditions of centuries for Pakistanis coming to Britain. The younger generation is learning a different way of life from their parents.
So in the case of number 3, then, I want you to do it in this way.
We need not lose our identity completely.
It's all too easy to focus on difference to generate a sense of grievance for political gain, and I think we all recognise that. But I believe that what unites us as British citizens is far greater than what divides.
The picture is not that of a province or corner of a country occupied by a distinct and growing population, though that would be perilous enough. The picture is of the occupation more and more intense of key areas, and it may be added of key functions, in the heartlands of the kingdom.
And I think it means that people are really rather afraid that this country might be rather swamped by people with a different culture. And you know, the British character has done so much for democracy, for law, and done so much throughout the world, that if there's any fear that it might be swamped, people are going to react and be rather hostile to those coming in.
We will fight you back, and we'll fight you with every bone, every nerve, every feeling, every ounce of blood we've got. We will have our country back!
There can't be any doubt that in many areas we have reach the absorptive capacity in respect of new immigrants. The load on our educational system, to say nothing of housing, health and welfare, is such that the strictest control is now necessary, and this is true irrespective of where the immigrants might come from. This would be true if they were coming from...
Looked at in terms of the history of race and immigration in this country, it says one thing to me. It says that what Enoch Powell says today, the Conservative Party says tomorrow, and the Labour Party legislates on the day after, with slight modifications.
I don't believe there is any person in this room who could be sincere that the Labour Party would be a vehicle for freedom. I have observed one thing about politics in Britain in regard to blacks. The Labour Party, because it says it's working class, and because we are working class, can't do certain things. They get the Tories to do it and then follow them afterwards.
They have to.
because they face a working class that's refusing more and more to pay for their mistakes in the form of chronic unemployment, rising prices, cutbacks in social services. In other words, a working class that is suffering a real decline in its living standards.
Save us all and our children.
Our ability to engage in projects and strive after goals which would lead to a more fulfilling life is greatly restricted. To ensure that we don't face a similar fate as Ivan Ilyich, it is crucial that we take a more honest look at ourselves and the life path that our deceptions have led us down.
Civilization began in the primeval forests and extended, made more articulate in the course of centuries. It's a conversation which goes on both in public and within each of ourselves. Conversation, of course, implies a discourse, which no one voice dominates, no one is shouted down, and contrasting perspectives are heard and respected even when agreement is unlikely and compromise unexplored. Yet we now live in an age where many have no interest in a real conversation, an age where a delight is taken in silencing dissenting voices. We live in an age where some talk of the importance of history, but really mean propaganda.
They're doing acts of people dipping and stabbing each other. That's glamorizing and that's wrong. That gang life, and people remind me to this day about people I've stabbed. I don't even remember. You know, that's the God's honest truth.
But I don't think you'll ever get the feeling of the community feeling that we had here. You'll never get it in flats. I'm sure of this, because they're not real. They're not like houses. This is all sort of artificial now. It's, well, I don't think I'm ever going home anymore. I always think I'm just there temporarily.
Revolution! The government's taken £850 million out of the Metropolitan Police since 2010, and it's going to have to take, the Metropolitan Police is going to have to take a further £235 million out. That means police officer numbers are now below 30,000. So it's all very well Paul saying the Mayor of London should be doing this, but actually the police budget is very much dependent on government funding. What the Mayor of London, what we have done, and over and above the previous administration, which was Boris, the Mayor has put more into the Metropolitan Police than ever before, but we are still in a position where police officers are incredibly
Just going to stop you there. I want to try and get as many of your points as quick as possible in. A quick point from you, then I'll come to Nikhila.
Like someone said earlier, not all the knife crime is related to gangs. I lost my eldest brother in 2017, November, to knife crime, which wasn't gang related. But one thing with me, I'm very proactive in helping the community, helping myself and my generation. I'm part of a youth board called the Mayor's Fun Youth Board. We operate from City Hall, have meetings once or twice every month. And what we've noticed is that there's a lot of charities doing what they're doing, but they're not supported enough. Alongside what you were saying with music, I'm a musician myself, I rap, I sing, I produce. Man, I ain't got time for the negative vibes. Enough man wanna hate on me, and I don't know why. You understand? And that's because I made that tune. Listen. And hear what? Most of the lyrics I write is very positive lyrics. And another thing as well, we always talk about schools, we always talk about youth clubs. I've seen one hella youth clubs get dropped, just like that, because they ain't given enough funding. People are talking about youth work. What about people in
The man responsible for that funding sitting next to you.
But you need the volunteers as well, actually.
Australia, New Zealand, South America, North America.
From Libya, you come to Syria, to Iraq, to Afghanistan, to Somalia. I mean,
from China all the way to Spain, under the Ottoman Caliphate, the Abbasid, the Umayyad Caliphate.
The sort of Britain that we want is a Britain where the Sharia is implemented.
How is it that we can now deny just safety?
Whether it be France, whether it be other countries, whether it be European countries.
So there is a serious political problem.
If you want to change something, you have to be a part of something. You have to get involved, you have to educate yourself on it, and you have to make a change from inside. It's all good and well having opinions saying no one listens, but if you're not there to be listened to, who's going to listen?
During the war, I rested my trust in the British people